Ethan Carter gripped the construction plans in his calloused hands, studying the intricate details of Carter Construction's latest project. The morning sun illuminated his office at the Carter family estate, where generations of his family had built their legacy. At 35, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had earned his position through merit rather than mere inheritance. "Mr. Carter, your father's here to see you," his assistant, Paula, announced through the intercom. "Send him in," Ethan replied, rolling up the blueprints. Rupert Carter strode into the office, his presence commanding respect despite his advancing years. "That's the community center project?" he asked, nodding toward the plans. "Yes, we're finalizing the foundation specifications. The soil composition presents some challenges, but nothing we can't handle." Ethan pulled out another set of drawings. "Take a look at these structural modifications I'm proposing." Rupert examined the plans, his weathered face breaking into a proud smile. "You've always had an eye for this, son. Even as a kid, you'd spend hours with me at construction sites while Tristan—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Speaking of Tristan, have you seen the latest marketing proposals?" Ethan asked, his jaw tightening slightly. "The budget seems inflated." "Your brother has his own way of doing things," Rupert replied diplomatically. "Perhaps you should discuss it with him directly." "I've tried." Ethan stood, pacing behind his desk. He deflects, makes excuses about market research and focus groups. "The numbers don't add up, Dad. Something's off." A knock interrupted their conversation. Tristan Carter entered without waiting for a response, his designer suit and perfectly styled hair a stark contrast to Ethan's more practical attire. "Family meeting without me." Tristan's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "I just had lunch with the mayor. He's excited about the community center project." "We were discussing the marketing budget," Ethan stated flatly. "Care to explain why we need $100,000 for market penetration analysis?" Tristan waved dismissively. "You wouldn't understand. Marketing isn't just about putting up billboards anymore. We need sophisticated data analytics, focus groups, social media campaigns." "I understand numbers just fine," Ethan cut in. "What I don't understand is why our marketing expenses have tripled since you took over the department." "Boys," Rupert intervened, "this isn't the time. We have the charity gala tonight. Your mother expects both of you there, presenting a united front." Ethan noticed Tristan checking his phone, thumbs flying across the screen. "Hot date tonight, little brother." "Just coordinating with Clara about the gala presentations," Tristan replied smoothly. "She's been instrumental in organizing everything." The mention of his wife made Ethan pause. Clara had been spending more time at the office lately, claiming the charity event needed her attention. He'd been so consumed with the community center project that he hadn't given it much thought. "How is Clara?" Rupert asked. "We've missed her at Sunday dinners." "Busy," Ethan replied shortly. "The gala's taken up a lot of her time." Tristan's phone buzzed again. "Speaking of which, I should head back to marketing. We're finalizing the presentation slides." He slipped out before Ethan could press him further about the budget. Rupert watched him leave, then turned to his eldest son. "Don't be too hard on him, Ethan. Not everyone has your dedication to the technical side of the business. This isn't about technical versus creative, Dad. Something's not right. I can feel it." Later that afternoon, Ethan walked through the marketing department, nodding to employees who hurriedly looked away. Through the glass walls of Tristan's office, he saw his brother and Clara huddled over a laptop, their heads close together. They were laughing about something, and Clara's hand lingered on Tristan's shoulder longer than necessary. Ethan stood there, watching, as an uncomfortable feeling settled in his gut. He thought back to their childhood, to the times he and Tristan had been inseparable. When had things changed? When had his brother become a stranger? His phone vibrated. A text from Adrian Bell, the family accountant. "Need to discuss some irregularities in the marketing department's expense reports. Urgent." Ethan typed back, "My office. 30 minutes." He took one last look at Tristan's office. Clara was gathering her things, still smiling at whatever joke they'd shared. She didn't notice him standing there, didn't look his way as she left. The foundation of trust Ethan had built his life upon was beginning to crack, hairline fractures spreading through the careful construction of his world. But unlike the buildings he raised from the ground up, he couldn't simply reinforce these weakening supports with steel and concrete. In his office, Ethan pulled up the company's financial records on his computer. Numbers didn't lie. People did, and he was going to find out exactly what his brother and wife were trying to hide. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Bell is here to see you." "Send him in." Ethan straightened in his chair, preparing himself for whatever revelations were about to come. He was Rupert Carter's son, after all, and Rupert Carter had taught him that in business, as in life, you had to face problems head-on. The door opened, and Adrian entered, clutching a thick folder of documents. One look at the accountant's face told Ethan everything he needed to know. His instincts had been right. Something was very wrong at Carter Construction, and he was going to get to the bottom of it, no matter the cost. The morning of the community center groundbreaking ceremony dawned bright and clear. Ethan adjusted his tie in his office mirror, his mind racing through the day's schedule. The past few weeks had been a blur of suspicious activities and mounting evidence, but today needed to be perfect. Carter Construction's reputation depended on it. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." Adrian Bell entered, his usual neat appearance slightly disheveled. "Mr. Carter, I found something you need to see." He placed a stack of papers on the desk. "These are expense reports from the marketing department's recent hotel bookings." Ethan picked up the documents, scanning the dates and locations. "The Riverside Inn. That's 40 miles from here. Why would they need?" He stopped, his hand tightening on the paper until it crumpled. "There's more," Adrian continued. "The charges appear twice, once under business expenses and again under client entertainment, double billing the company while trying to hide the actual dates of stay. How long has this been going on?" "At least 6 months that I can trace definitively, but there are patterns going back further." Ethan slammed the papers down. "Give me everything. Every receipt, every charge, every time they've..." He cut himself off, taking a deep breath. "The ceremony starts in an hour. We'll deal with this afterward." At the construction site, local media had gathered to document the groundbreaking. Rupert stood proudly at the podium, addressing the crowd about Carter Construction's commitment to community development. Ethan scanned the audience, his gaze falling on Tristan and Clara near the refreshment table. They stood too close together, sharing what appeared to be an inside joke. Tristan's hand brushed against Clara's lower back in a gesture that seemed unconsciously intimate. Ethan watched as his wife leaned in to whisper something in his brother's ear, her lips nearly touching Tristan's skin. "Mr. Carter," a reporter approached Ethan with a microphone. "Can you tell us about the innovative features planned for the community center?" Ethan forced himself to focus, slipping into his professional persona. The design incorporates sustainable materials and energy-efficient systems that will serve as a model for future development in Willow Creek. Throughout his interview, he kept Tristan and Clara in his peripheral vision. They had moved slightly apart now, maintaining a show of professional distance, but their body language told a different story, one of shared secrets and hidden desires. The ceremony concluded with the official groundbreaking, photographs of city officials and Carter Construction executives wielding golden shovels. Ethan posed for the cameras, gritting his teeth through forced smiles. Later that evening, he sat in their bedroom, waiting for Clara. When she finally came home, her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly mussed. "The ceremony went well," she said, avoiding his eyes as she removed her jewelry. Everyone seemed impressed with the presentation. "I saw you today," Ethan said quietly, "with Tristan." Clara froze for a moment, then continued her bedtime routine. "We were working. The marketing team." "Don't." Ethan's voice cut through her excuses like a blade. "Your phone. Give it to me." "What? That's ridiculous. I'm not going to." The software update last week. It backed up your messages. He stood, advancing toward her. All of them, Clara, every single one. The color drained from her face. Ethan, I can explain. Explain what? The hotel rooms. The late-night meetings. His laugh was hollow. The messages about how much you love him, how I don't understand you like he does. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. He pulled out his phone, opening a document. May 15th, Riverside Inn. June 3rd, Lakeview Hotel. July 21st. Stop it. Tears streamed down her face now. You're acting crazy. Crazy. Ethan's voice remained deadly calm. Crazy is betraying your husband with his own brother. Crazy is stealing from the company to fund your little romance. We never meant to. To what? Get caught. He moved closer, towering over her. How long, Clara? How long have you been sleeping with my brother? She backed away until she hit the wall. Please, Ethan, we can work this out. We can get counseling. Try to. There's nothing to work out. He turned away from her, disgust evident in every movement. Pack your things. Get out of my house. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. Rights? He spun back around, his expression terrible in its intensity. You want to talk about rights? Fine. Let's talk about them tomorrow, in the company boardroom, with our lawyers present. I'm sure the board will be very interested in hearing about how you and Tristan have been embezzling funds. You wouldn't dare. It would destroy the company's reputation. Try me, he replied, voice like ice. 1 hour, Clara. Anything you leave behind gets thrown out. He stormed from the room, ignoring her sobs. In his study, he poured himself a drink and made a call. Adrian, execute Protocol Alpha. Full audit of the marketing department, effective immediately, and contact our attorneys first thing in the morning. He paused, staring at the family photos on his desk. One more thing. Call security. Have them revoke Tristan and Clara's access to all Carter construction properties tonight. The next morning, Ethan sat in the boardroom, flanked by the company's legal team. Rupert and Marilyn sat at the far end, their faces drawn with shock and grief. When Tristan and Clara entered, they found armed security guards stationed at the doors. What is this? Tristan demanded, trying to maintain his usual confident demeanor. Ethan nodded to Adrian, who distributed thick folders to everyone present. This, Ethan said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room, is evidence of your betrayal, both personal and professional. As the board members opened their folders, gasps and murmurs filled the room. Tristan's face went pale as he realized the extent of the documentation. Bank statements, hotel receipts, text messages, surveillance photos. You had us followed. Clara whispered, horrified. I protected my interests. Ethan remained seated, emanating cold authority, which is more than I can say for either of you. You were too busy playing boss. Tristan sneered, but his voice shook slightly. Clara needed someone who could keep up with her ambitions. Ambitions? Ethan raised an eyebrow. Is that what you call stealing from our family's company? You never understood me. Clara added, grabbing Tristan's hand defiantly. You were content to let life pass you by, while we built something real. Rupert slammed his hand on the table. Something real. You've destroyed this family. Both of you. The board will vote this afternoon on your immediate termination, Ethan announced, his tone businesslike. Criminal charges are being considered, but first, he pulled out one final document. Clara, you'll find divorce papers in front of you. Sign them. And if I refuse, she challenged, then I'll ensure every hotel, every restaurant, every place you two used company money to conduct your affair becomes public record. His smile was razor-sharp. I'm sure your social circle would love to hear those details. Silence fell over the boardroom as Clara picked up the pen with trembling fingers. Tristan watched helplessly as she signed away her marriage, her position, her reputation. Get out, Ethan commanded when she finished. Both of you. Security will escort you from the building." As they were led away, Marilyn burst into tears. Rupert moved to comfort his wife, looking years older than he had that morning. "Son," he began, but Ethan cut him off. "The community center project needs my attention." He stood, straightening his tie. "Adrian, have legal prepare statements for the press. Keep it professional. Corporate restructuring. Mutual separation. Nothing more." He walked out of the boardroom, his footsteps echoing through the halls of the building his ancestors had built. The foundation of his life had crumbled, but he would rebuild it stronger, harder, without room for weakness or betrayal. In his office, he looked out over the city his family had helped shape. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You'll regret this, brother. We're not finished." Ethan deleted the message without responding. They were finished. He would make sure of it. 6 weeks after the boardroom confrontation, Ethan sat alone in his office at midnight, surrounded by project files and financial reports. The betrayal had transformed his workspace into a command center for damage control. Spreadsheets covered his desk, each one revealing another layer of Tristan and Clara's deception. A knock interrupted his concentration. Adrian Bell entered, carrying a fresh stack of documents. "More irregularities?" Ethan asked, not looking up from his computer. "Different this time." Adrian placed a folder in front of him. "They've started a competing firm, already secured 3 contracts that were supposed to be ours." Ethan opened the folder, scanning the contents. "They're undercutting our bids by 20%. "How?" "That's not all." Adrian shifted uncomfortably. "Clara's pregnant." The pen in Ethan's hand snapped, spraying ink across the documents. He stood abruptly, turning to face the window. "How far along?" 4 months, according to the medical records our investigators found. Simple math told him what he needed to know. The child had been conceived while he and Clara were still married, while she was sleeping in their bed, making plans for their future together. "Mr. Carter," Adrian's voice was hesitant. "There's something else. They've been contacting our suppliers, trying to negotiate exclusive contracts." "Let them try." Ethan turned back, his expression hardened. "Get me a meeting with the board tomorrow morning. It's time to implement some changes." After Adrian left, Ethan called an unexpected ally. "Miss Pierce, I need your expertise on something urgent." Daphne Pierce, corporate attorney and recent addition to his inner circle, arrived within the hour. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never lost a case. "Corporate espionage," she said, reviewing the files. "Plus breach of contract, violation of non-compete clauses. We can bury them in litigation." "Not enough." Ethan paced the room. "They're using our own playbook against us. Tristan knows our strategies, our weaknesses. Then we change the game." Daphne pulled out her laptop. "Your company's bylaws give the CEO extraordinary powers during times of crisis. We can use that to restructure operations and implement new security protocols." They worked through the night, crafting a strategy that would protect Carter Construction while systematically dismantling Tristan and Clara's attempts at competition. By dawn, Ethan had a clear path forward. The board meeting that morning was brief but productive. Ethan presented evidence of corporate espionage, then outlined his plan for restructuring. The vote was unanimous in his favor. "Effective immediately," he announced, "all departments will undergo security audits. New confidentiality agreements will be required. Anyone found sharing company information with outside parties will face immediate termination and legal action." One board member raised his hand. "What about the rumors?" "About Tristan and Clara. My personal life is not up for discussion." Ethan's tone left no room for argument. "Focus on protecting this company's interests. That's what you're paid for." Later that week, Ethan met with Naomi Cole, a prominent interior designer recommended by one of his clients. Her reputation for transforming spaces matched his need for change. "The office needs a complete overhaul," he explained, leading her through the building. "Something that reflects strength and innovation." Naomi studied the space with a professional eye. And what about your home? A man's environment shapes his mindset. Ethan hesitated. He hadn't changed anything in the house since Clara left, letting the rooms gather dust like museum exhibits of his failed marriage. Start with the office, he decided. The house can wait. But Naomi proved persistent. Over the next few weeks, as she transformed the corporate headquarters with clean lines and bold designs, she gradually drew Ethan into conversations about personal renewal. Your workspace reflects your vision, she observed one evening as they reviewed material samples. But where do you find peace when the workday ends? Her question struck deeper than she probably intended. Peace had become a foreign concept, replaced by an all-consuming drive for success and vindication. That night, Ethan returned home to find his parents waiting in the driveway. Rupert looked grim, Marilyn worried. "We need to talk," Rupert said as Ethan let them in. "About the future of the company. If this is about Tristan, it's about you." Marilyn touched his arm gently. "You're working yourself to exhaustion, sweetheart. When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours?" "I'm fine." Ethan moved away from her touch. "The company needs me focused right now." "The company needs you healthy," Rupert countered, "and thinking clearly. This vendetta against your brother." "Vendetta?" Ethan laughed harshly. "He destroyed my marriage, stole from our company, and now he's trying to ruin everything we've built. This isn't a vendetta, Dad. This is survival." "And what about your survival?" Marilyn's voice cracked. "You're not eating, barely sleeping. The anger is consuming you." "Anger keeps me sharp." Ethan poured himself a drink. "It keeps me from making the same mistakes again. Trust, forgiveness, those are luxuries we can't afford anymore." Rupert stepped forward. "Son, we're not asking you to forgive them. What they did was unforgivable. But don't let their betrayal destroy who you are." "Who I am?" Ethan set down his glass carefully. "I'm your son. I'm a Carter. And Carters protect what's theirs. Isn't that what you taught me?" "I taught you to be strong," Rupert agreed. "But strength without wisdom becomes tyranny." The words hung in the air between them. Ethan turned away, staring out the window at the gardens Clara had once tended. They were overgrown now, wild and untamed. "I have a meeting with Adrian tomorrow morning," he said finally. "We're doing a complete audit of all company projects from the past 5 years. We need to identify any potential vulnerabilities before Tristan can exploit them." His parents exchanged defeated looks. They had lost him, at least for now, to his mission of revenge. After they left, Ethan walked through the empty house. Each room held memories he needed to exorcise. In the study, he found an old photo album, pictures of him and Tristan as children, playing at their father's construction sites. School graduations, family vacations. He closed the album without looking further. The past was dead. Only the future mattered now, a future he would build on his own terms, without the weakness of trust or the burden of brotherhood. His phone buzzed with a text from Naomi. "Reviewed the design proposals. Ready to start the renovation whenever you are." Ethan looked around his haunted house and made a decision. "Both office and home," he texted back. "Clean slate. No reminders of the past." He spent the rest of the night in his home office, reviewing documents Adrian had prepared. Each page revealed new betrayals, new challenges to overcome. But with every revelation, his resolve strengthened. Tristan and Clara thought they could build their happiness on the ruins of his trust. He would show them how wrong they were. Carter Construction would not just survive their betrayal. It would emerge stronger, harder, unassailable. And Ethan Carter would never again be vulnerable to the weakness of love or the illusion of loyalty. Ethan Carter tapped his pen against the polished conference table at the Willow Creek Chamber of Commerce meeting. His attention wasn't on the speaker discussing local business development, but rather on Daphne Pierce, the sharp-suited corporate attorney presenting statistics on recent litigation trends. Her reputation for ruthlessly dismantling opposing counsel preceded her. "Thank you for your attention," Daphne concluded, gathering her materials. "Any questions?" The room rustled with movement as attendees began networking. Ethan remained in his seat, watching Daphne deflect attempts at small talk with practiced efficiency. When the crowd thinned, he approached. "Ms. Pierce, your analysis of predatory business practices was fascinating." She studied him with calculating eyes. "Mr. Carter, I followed your company's recent situation with interest." "Have dinner with me," he said, professionally. "I have a proposition that might intrigue you." 2 hours later, they sat in a private booth at Willow Creek's finest restaurant, La Maison. Daphne cut straight to the point between bites of coq au vin. "You want revenge," she stated, "but you need it to be legal, sustainable, and absolute." "I want justice," Ethan corrected, though his tight grip on his wineglass betrayed his emotions. "My brother and ex-wife think they can build their success on stolen foundations. And you want to demolish those foundations." Daphne's lips curved in appreciation. "Tell me about their vulnerabilities." Ethan pulled out a folder. Tristan's new company relies heavily on 3 major suppliers. Without them, his projects grind to a halt. "Acquisition targets," Daphne mused, scanning the documents. "But they'll see you coming. Not if we use shell corporations and third-party buyers. I'm willing to liquidate personal assets to fund it." Daphne's eyes glinted. "Better. Who handles your PR?" "We don't have a dedicated team." "Why?" "Because we need to control the narrative. I know someone. Jasmine Fox at Willow Creek Lifestyle. She's ambitious, hungry for bigger stories than charity galas and home renovations." "Set up a meeting," Ethan decided. "And Daphne, money is no object. I want them destroyed." The next few weeks became a whirlwind of covert meetings and careful preparation. Adrian Bell proved invaluable, providing detailed financial analyses of potential acquisition targets. Each morning, Ethan received updates on Tristan and Clara's business activities, their client meetings, their attempts to secure new contracts. "They're planning a major housing development," Adrian reported one evening. "Luxury condos on the east side." "Who's financing it?" "First National seems interested. They're meeting tomorrow to discuss terms." Ethan smiled coldly. "Call Gerald Matthews at First National. Remind him who financed his brother's restaurant chain when no one else would take the risk." The next day, Tristan and Clara emerged from First National looking shaken. The pattern repeated across town. Banks suddenly became hesitant. Investors developed cold feet. Daphne orchestrated each setback through a web of business relationships and carefully timed revelations. Jasmine Fox proved to be a masterful ally. Her first article appeared in Willow Creek Lifestyle. Innovation or imitation? The fine line between inspiration and theft in local architecture. Without naming names, she raised pointed questions about originality and professional ethics that had Tristan's potential clients whispering. "They're getting desperate," Adrian reported after monitoring their financial transactions. "Tristan tried to access his trust fund yesterday, which has been frozen pending the fraud investigation," Daphne added with satisfaction. "They're running out of options." Ethan leaned back in his chair, reviewing their progress. The supplier acquisitions were proceeding quietly through various shell companies. Banking relationships were being systematically severed. The media was turning against them. "But it isn't enough," Ethan declared. "Daphne, prepare the documentation for a hostile takeover. Adrian, identify their weakest subcontractors, ones who might be willing to share information about cut corners and safety violations." "That's aggressive," Daphne warned. "They'll fight back." "Let them." Ethan's voice was steel. "I've been building this trap for months. It's time to spring it." The team worked late into the night, piecing together their strategy. As Daphne reviewed legal documents and Adrian compiled financial data, Ethan received an unexpected call. "Mr. Carter, this is Trevor Ross from the building inspector's office. We've received some concerning reports about projects handled by your brother's company." "Really?" Ethan's tone was neutral. "That sounds serious." "Very. We'll need to conduct thorough inspections, multiple sites. Of course, public safety is paramount. Ethan muted the phone and smiled at his team. The dominoes are falling. By month's end, Tristan and Clara's company faced investigations from 3 regulatory agencies. Their suppliers, now secretly controlled by Ethan, began raising prices and extending delivery times. Clients grew wary. Contracts were canceled. "They're calling it a witch hunt," Jasmine reported over lunch. "Playing the victims. Then let's give them something real to complain about," Ethan replied. "How's that investigation into their project safety records coming along?" "Nearly ready. The evidence from those subcontractors is damning. When this hits, their reputation will be radioactive." The pieces were in place. Ethan stood at his office window, watching the city below. Somewhere out there, his brother and ex-wife still thought they could win, still believed they could escape consequences. He would teach them otherwise. His phone buzzed. A message from Daphne. "Takeover documents ready. Board meeting scheduled for next week." Ethan typed back, "Proceed." Then he poured himself a drink and smiled. The real battle was about to begin. The annual Willow Creek Business Symposium buzzed with anticipation. Tristan and Clara stood at the podium, presenting their revolutionary housing development to hundreds of industry professionals. Tristan's confidence radiated as he clicked through polished slides. "Our design philosophy prioritizes innovative living spaces," he declared, gesturing to architectural renderings, each element carefully crafted to. A murmur rippled through the audience as phones lit up with notifications. Jasmine Fox's latest exposé had just gone live. "Stolen Dreams: The Truth Behind Willow Creek's Newest Development." Tristan faltered mid-sentence as attendees began reading. The article detailed how the development's designs had been copied from confidential Carter construction documents. Side-by-side comparisons left no room for doubt. "These allegations are baseless," Tristan protested, but his voice cracked. "We have documentation." "Indeed you do." Daphne Pierce's voice cut through the chaos as she stood. "Documentation stolen from Carter construction servers. Would you like me to share the access logs?" The live stream captured the crisis unfolding in real time. Investors rose and walked out. Reporters rushed forward, shouting questions. Clara grabbed Tristan's arm, whispering urgently, but the microphones caught her words. "We need to leave now." Their hasty exit became fodder for local news. Within hours, social media exploded with memes of their retreat. Tristan's attempted defense, a rambling post accusing Ethan of corporate sabotage, backfired spectacularly when Daphne released evidence of his own illegal activities. "They're planning something," Adrian warned Ethan that evening. Tristan withdrew significant cash from their accounts this morning. "Let them thrash," Ethan replied, reviewing surveillance photos. "Each move they make digs their grave deeper." Clara launched their counteroffensive through a carefully orchestrated charity campaign. She organized a gala benefiting women's shelters, positioning herself as a victim of corporate bullying. Local media covered her tearful speech about powerful men abusing their positions. Ethan's response came within hours. Carter Construction announced a major affordable housing initiative designed in partnership with Naomi Cole, which would provide homes for hundreds of low-income families. The contrast between Clara's luxury condos and Ethan's community-focused development dominated headlines. "Your brother's trying to turn your parents against you," Daphne reported. "He showed them documents suggesting you're using company resources for personal vengeance. Have our investigators found anything in their financial records?" "Better." Daphne smiled grimly. "We traced wire transfers from the family trust to offshore accounts." Tristan's been embezzling for months. The evidence shattered Tristan's remaining credibility with their parents. Faced with proof of their younger son's theft, Rupert and Marilyn withdrew their support completely. Tristan's desperation grew visible. During a key supplier meeting, he discovered Carter Construction had acquired control through shell companies. His attempt to find alternative suppliers failed as word spread about missed payments and broken contracts. "Their cash reserves are almost depleted," Adrian reported. "They've started selling personal assets." Press harder, Ethan commanded. I want them feeling pressure from all directions. The pressure mounted at a crucial city council meeting. Both companies presented competing project proposals. Tristan's presentation derailed when council members received anonymous tips about safety violations at his previous developments. These accusations are outrageous, Tristan shouted, lunging at a council member who questioned his integrity. Security intervened as cameras rolled. Clara attempted damage control through back channels, but few would listen. Her tears had lost their power against mounting evidence. Finally, they tried a last-ditch appeal. Their representative approached Daphne with an offer. Merge the companies, share control, end the war. Tell her, Ethan instructed Daphne, that she can dissolve their company and surrender all assets or face complete destruction. No negotiation. The rejection drove Tristan and Clara to increasingly desperate measures. Tristan was caught on camera threatening a building inspector. Clara's public appearances became erratic, marked by emotional outbursts and incoherent accusations. They've lost 3 major clients this week. Adrian updated. Their project financing is collapsing. Ethan watched their downfall from his office, remembering the betrayal that started it all. His revenge wasn't just about punishment. It was about justice, about showing the world that actions had consequences. The final blow came unexpectedly. A routine insurance audit revealed systematic fraud in Tristan's completed projects. False claims, inflated costs, faked inspections. The evidence mounted into an irrefutable case. The regulatory agencies are moving in, Daphne announced. Multiple investigations, possible criminal charges. Perfect. Ethan turned from his window. Prepare the takeover documents. It's time to end this. Monroe Construction's headquarters buzzed with anticipation as board members filed into the newly renovated conference room. Rupert Carter gripped the podium, his knuckles white, while Marilyn sat rigid in her chair. The tension thickened as Tristan and Clara slipped in through the back door, taking seats near the exit. This meeting will come to order, Rupert announced, his voice carrying the weight of decades of leadership. He glanced at Ethan, who gave a subtle nod. Today marks a pivotal moment in our company's history. Tristan leaned forward, a smirk playing on his lips. Clara touched his arm, both of them confident in their position despite recent setbacks. Their arrogance would be their undoing. After extensive consultation with our legal team, Rupert continued, I am implementing an immediate change in leadership structure. He pulled out a document. Effective immediately, all company assets and control transfer to Ethan Carter. The smirk vanished from Tristan's face. What? He jumped to his feet. You can't do this. Sit down, Mr. Carter, Daphne Pierce commanded. She approached the board table, spreading documents before each member. These papers detail the transfer of ownership. All legal requirements have been met. This is a coup. Tristan's face reddened. He's manipulating you, Dad. Can't you see what he's doing? Rupert's expression hardened. I see perfectly well what everyone has done. The evidence speaks for itself. Adrian Bell stepped forward, carrying a thick binder. Shall I outline the financial discrepancies we've uncovered, Mr. Tristan? The fraudulent contracts, the embezzled funds. Those records were confidential. Clara burst out, then caught herself too late. So you admit they exist? Daphne pounced on the slip. Interesting choice of defense, Mrs. Carter. Ethan watched the scene unfold, his face impassive. He'd orchestrated this moment down to the smallest detail, each player positioned exactly where they needed to be. Tristan tried a different tactic. Think about what you're doing to the family name. The scandal. The scandal you created. Ethan finally spoke, his voice deadly quiet. When you stole my wife. When you undermined this company. When you betrayed everything our parents built. You drove her away. Tristan shouted. You were too focused on work, too blind to see. Enough. Ethan cut him off. Your theatrics won't work here. The board has seen the evidence. The vote is final. Security guards materialized at the doors as Daphne distributed more documents. These detail the terms of your immediate termination and the dissolution of your competing business interests. You can't just erase us, Clara protested. We have rights. Rights? Ethan laughed coldly. Like the right to steal company secrets, to endanger lives with substandard construction, to defraud investors. Those are lies. Tristan lunged forward, but security intercepted him. Adrian. Ethan nodded to the accountant, who activated a projection screen. Video evidence played. Tristan accepting bribes, Clara falsifying inspection documents, both of them plotting in secret meetings. We've documented everything, Ethan continued as their faces drained of color. The authorities are very interested in your creative approach to building codes. The board members watched in horrified fascination as more evidence appeared on screen. Rupert and Marilyn looked away, unable to witness their younger son's disgrace. This isn't over, Tristan snarled as security began escorting them out. You think you've won. You've got nothing. Ethan stood slowly, towering over the table. I have everything. The company, our parents' respect, a clear conscience. His voice dropped lower. What do you have, brother? A crumbling business built on lies. A relationship founded on betrayal. Clara tried one last desperate gambit. The child. You wouldn't separate. Your custody hearing is next week, Daphne interrupted smoothly. The judge will be very interested in the psychological evaluation results. They were half dragged from the room, their threats and protests echoing down the hallway. Through the windows, camera flashes announced Jasmine Fox's media presence, ready to document their downfall. Ethan addressed the remaining board members. Let's discuss the company's future. He activated a presentation. I've prepared a detailed restructuring plan. The meeting proceeded efficiently, but beneath his professional demeanor, Ethan savored each moment. Years of planning, months of strategic moves, all culminating in this perfect execution of justice. Outside, Tristan and Clara faced a media firestorm. Their desperate attempts to spin the situation only dug them deeper as reporters fired questions about the emerging evidence of their crimes. Inside, Ethan built the foundation of Carter Construction's new era. Each decision, each policy change another brick in the wall between past and future. He'd torn down their illusions of victory and built something stronger from the ruins. Beatrice, now Daphne's, heels clicked against marble as she strode into Ethan's office. The federal agents just left Tristan's house. They seized everything. Computers, phones, files. Ethan didn't look up from his laptop. They found more than we expected. Tristan wasn't just cutting corners on local projects. He'd set up shell companies to launder money through international contracts. Now Ethan looked up, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Send everything to our contacts at the SEC. Already done. Daphne placed a USB drive on his desk. But there's more. Clara's been embezzling from her women's shelter charity, using donations to fund their lifestyle. Perfect. Ethan pressed a button on his intercom. Get me Jasmine Fox. Within hours, news vans surrounded Tristan and Clara's mansion. Federal agents carried out box after box of evidence while reporters shouted questions. Through his office window, Ethan watched the live stream on multiple screens. Sir, his assistant Paula interrupted. Mr. Bell needs to see you immediately. Adrian rushed in, clutching printouts. They're trying to transfer assets offshore. I caught the transactions just in time. Block everything, Ethan commanded. Lock down their accounts, freeze their credit lines. I want them desperate. Already done. Adrian's fingers flew over his tablet. But Tristan made a call to some questionable people in the city. Our surveillance team picked it up. Let me guess, trying to hire muscle. Worse, he's offering to expose safety violations in our older projects if we don't back off. Ethan's laugh held no humor. Send in Miles. Miles Owen entered silently, his military bearing evident in his stance. Sir, Tristan's making threats. Show him why that's a mistake. With pleasure. Miles pulled out his phone, dispatching orders to his security team. Within hours, Tristan's desperate gambit backfired. His hired thugs were arrested in a sting operation, their phones containing recorded evidence of his solicitation to commit crimes. Each threat he'd made became another weapon in Ethan's arsenal. Clara attempted damage control through a tearful TV interview. Ethan is destroying our family out of spite. He never understood what real love means. The broadcast cut off mid-sentence as evidence of her charity fraud hit the news. Videos surfaced showing her using donation money at luxury spas, high-end restaurants, exclusive boutiques. Their lawyer quit, Daphne reported later that day. No one will represent them now. What about the custody hearing? Scheduled for tomorrow. The psychological evaluation results are devastating. The child shows clear signs of trauma from their erratic behavior, not yours. Then have my parents prepared to take temporary custody, Ethan instructed. It'll be best for the child. The hearing proved brutal. Tristan and Clara's facades cracked under questioning. Their attempts to paint Ethan as the villain dissolved when evidence of their neglect emerged: missed doctor appointments, unexplained absences, witnesses to their public fights. The court hereby grants temporary custody to Rupert and Marilyn Carter, the judge announced. Furthermore, given the pending criminal charges, all visitation must be supervised. Clara's scream echoed through the courthouse. Tristan had to be restrained by bailiffs as he lunged toward Ethan, shouting threats that only strengthened the judge's decision. Back at Carter Construction, Ethan implemented the next phase. Building inspectors descended on all of Tristan's completed projects, armed with anonymous tips about specific violations. The results exceeded expectations. 3 buildings evacuated so far, Adrian reported. Structural issues, substandard materials, falsified safety certificates. The media's having a field day. Make sure our company handles the renovations, Ethan instructed. Full price, no corners cut. Show them the difference between their methods and ours. The contrast proved devastating. Each revelation of Tristan's negligence highlighted Carter Construction's integrity. Clients flocked to Ethan's company while Tristan's former customers filed lawsuits. The courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. After weeks of testimony, dozens of witnesses, and mountains of evidence, justice was about to be served. In the matter of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and criminal negligence, the judge began. This court finds the defendants, Tristan Carter and Clara Holmes Carter, guilty on all counts. Tristan's face turned ashen. Clara swayed in her seat. Given the severity of these crimes, particularly the willful endangerment of public safety through substandard construction practices, this court sentences Tristan Carter to 15 years in federal prison. Gasps filled the courtroom. Tristan's legs gave out, forcing him to grip the defense table. Clara Holmes Carter, in consideration of your role as primary caregiver and cooperation with authorities, this court sentences you to 3 years house arrest with mandatory community service. Ethan watched from the gallery, his expression unchanging. The sentences weren't just punishment. They were public proof of his triumph, validation of his relentless pursuit of justice. Additionally, the judge continued, the defendants are ordered to pay restitution totaling $20 million to affected parties. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Ethan. How do you feel about the verdict? Justice has been served, he stated simply. Carter Construction will continue focusing on what matters, building quality projects that benefit our community. In the following months, Ethan's vision for the company expanded. The community center project, once tainted by Tristan's betrayal, became a showcase of innovation and integrity. Local schools brought students to tour the construction site, learning about ethical business practices. Rupert and Marilyn thrived in their role as guardians, providing the stability their grandson desperately needed. The boy's nightmares decreased, his grades improved, and therapists noted significant positive changes. Ethan transformed the company's culture. New policies emphasized transparency and accountability. Employee profit-sharing programs rewarded ethical behavior, The industry took notice. Carter Construction became a model for corporate responsibility. "Our latest quarter's results are impressive," Adrian announced during a board meeting. "Our market share has doubled. Client satisfaction is at record highs." "And Tristan's former clients?" Ethan asked. "Most have signed with us. The rest are in negotiations." The company's success attracted national attention. Business magazines featured Ethan's leadership style. Universities invited him to speak about corporate ethics. Each appearance reinforced his triumph over betrayal. One evening, as Ethan worked late in his office, Daphne brought news from prison. Tristan tried to appeal, failed spectacularly. He's been moved to maximum security after trying to bribe guards. And Clara, struggling under house arrest. Her therapy sessions aren't going well. She keeps ranting about revenge. Let her. Ethan turned back to his work. She has nothing left to threaten us with. The years of planning, the careful accumulation of evidence, the systematic destruction of their lives, it had all paid off. Tristan and Clara's betrayal had intended to destroy him. Instead, it had forged him into something stronger, more ruthless, unshakable. His revenge wasn't just complete, it was eternal. Long after their prison terms ended, they would live as pariahs, marked by their crimes, haunted by their choices. Their son would grow up knowing their true nature, understanding why they lost everything. And Ethan, he stood victorious atop the empire they tried to steal, his power absolute, his reputation untouchable. He transformed personal betrayal into professional triumph, emotional pain into corporate success. The moon rose over Willow Creek as Ethan signed the final documents transferring Tristan's remaining assets to Carter Construction. In the end, justice wasn't about forgiveness or healing. It was about power, taking it, wielding it, and using it to ensure those who betrayed you never rose again. He'd done more than survive their betrayal. He'd turned it into the foundation of his greatest victory. That was the true revenge, not just destroying them, but using their destruction to build something greater than they could have imagined. A decade later, the skyline of Willow Creek had transformed. Over the past 10 years, Carter Construction's influence stretched across the city, marked by innovative buildings and community developments that turned the once modest town into a thriving urban center. At the heart of it all stood the Carter Tower, a 50-story testament to power and precision. Ethan Carter sat in his top-floor office, reviewing reports from his company's newest international expansion. At 48, his presence commanded even more authority than before. Success had honed his features into sharp angles, while his eyes retained their calculating intensity. "Mr. Carter," Paula's voice came through the intercom. "The board is ready for your annual address." He gathered his materials, pausing to look at the digital displays covering one wall. Each screen showed real-time data from Carter Construction projects worldwide. The company had grown exponentially, becoming a global leader in sustainable development and urban renewal. The boardroom fell silent as Ethan entered. Daphne Pierce, now Chief Legal Officer, sat at his right hand. A decade of shared victories had cemented their professional partnership. Her reputation for ruthless efficiency had grown alongside the company's success. "Our 10th consecutive year of record growth," Ethan began, activating a holographic display. Carter Construction now operates in 27 countries, with a market capitalization exceeding $50 billion. The numbers told only part of the story. After Tristan and Clara's downfall, Ethan had systematically expanded his influence beyond construction. Carter Enterprises now included technology firms, financial institutions, and media companies, an empire built on the ashes of betrayal. "And our former competitors?" a board member asked. "There are no former competitors," Daphne answered with a cold smile. "Only acquired assets and cautionary tales." Indeed, Tristan's fate served as a warning to anyone who considered crossing Carter Construction. Released from prison after 12 years, he lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of town. His attempts to rebuild his life met systematic opposition. No construction company would hire him. No bank would fund him. His name had become synonymous with failure. Clara's story proved equally grim. Her house arrest had ended years ago, but her reputation never recovered. She worked part-time at a small marketing firm. Her former glamour faded, her social connections severed. The charity fraud conviction had made her untouchable in the nonprofit world she once dominated. Their son, Logan, now 17, thrived under Rupert and Marilyn's guardianship. He showed his uncle's aptitude for business, interning at Carter Construction during summers. Ethan had taken a careful interest in his education, ensuring he understood the price of betrayal through his parents' example. Uncle Ethan, Logan had asked during a recent meeting, "Why do you still block their attempts to rebuild?" "Because actions have eternal consequences," Ethan had replied. "Remember that when you take your place in this company." The lesson hadn't been lost on the teenager. Logan excelled in business courses, already showing signs of the Carter resolve. He maintained minimal contact with his biological parents, understanding that his future lay with the uncle who controlled the family empire. Adrian Bell had risen to chief financial officer, his early loyalty rewarded with substantial power. His financial acumen helped transform Carter Construction from a regional player into a global force. The evidence he gathered against Tristan and Clara had proven just the beginning of his value to the company. The Carter Foundation's latest initiative, Adrian reported to the board, has funded business ethics programs at 20 major universities. Our case study on corporate accountability has become standard teaching material. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Ethan had turned his revenge into an educational tool, ensuring future business leaders understood the cost of betrayal. The program specifically highlighted Tristan and Clara's downfall, their names forever linked to failure and disgrace. Naomi Cole had expanded her influence as well. Her design firm, now a Carter Construction subsidiary, set industry standards for sustainable architecture. The partnership proved mutually beneficial, her creativity tempered by his strategic vision, her innovations protected by his power. The community center project Naomi presented has been designated a historical landmark. Adrian continued. The American Institute of Architects is featuring it in their centennial exhibition on transformative urban design. The project that had marked the beginning of betrayal now stood as a monument to triumph. Each year, thousands of visitors toured the building, learning about the Carter Construction philosophy of integrity and excellence. None of the official histories mentioned Tristan or Clara's involvement. Jasmine Fox had parlayed her coverage of the scandal into national prominence. Her media company, backed by Carter Investments, specialized in investigative business journalism. She maintained a symbiotic relationship with Ethan, her network highlighting Carter Construction's successes while exposing competitors' weaknesses. "Our latest expose on industry corruption," she reported in a private meeting, has already triggered 3 federal investigations, none involving Carter Properties, of course. Rupert and Marilyn had aged gracefully, their latter years free from family strife. They hosted weekly dinners at the Carter estate, now attended by an inner circle of trusted allies. Tristan and Clara's names were never mentioned at these gatherings, their existence erased from family photographs and conversations. Miles Owen's security firm had expanded into a global operation, providing protection for all Carter enterprises. His teams monitored Tristan and Clara constantly, ensuring they never gained enough resources or connections to cause trouble. Any attempt to contact former business associates met swift, decisive response. They tried reaching out to an overseas investor last month, Miles informed Ethan. The approach was intercepted and discouraged. The message remained clear. No one in the business world would risk Carter Construction's wrath by helping the disgraced couple. Their isolation was complete and permanent. After the board meeting, Ethan visited the Carter Construction Training Center. Hundreds of employees learned company protocols in state-of-the-art facilities. The orientation video highlighted the company's commitment to ethics, using Tristan and Clara's case as a warning. Integrity isn't just a policy, Ethan told a group of new hires. It's the foundation of power. Those who betray that foundation pay the price forever. The trainees absorbed his words eagerly, unaware they were hearing a personal manifesto born of betrayal. To them, Ethan Carter represented the pinnacle of business success, his path to power sanitized by time and triumph. In his private moments, Ethan sometimes reviewed footage from the years of revenge. The boardroom confrontation, the court proceedings, the media coverage of Tristan and Clara's downfall. Each video was preserved in high definition, a digital testament to justice served. These weren't moments of weakness or regret. Rather, they reinforced his understanding of power and consequences. The betrayal that might have destroyed him had instead created something invincible, a man who turned personal pain into professional dominance. His marriage to Clara and brotherhood with Tristan had died, but the lessons lived on. Trust was a weapon, loyalty had to be enforced, and power, once gained, must be used to ensure betrayal never succeeded. The sun set over Willow Creek as Ethan reviewed plans for the company's next decade. Carter Construction would continue expanding, absorbing competitors, strengthening its hold on global markets. Each new project would further bury the past beneath layers of success. Logan would eventually take his place in the company hierarchy, groomed to continue the Carter legacy of power and retribution. The boy's parents would watch from their enforced poverty as their son inherited the empire their betrayal had helped build. That was Ethan's ultimate victory, not just destroying those who betrayed him, but ensuring their destruction served as an eternal lesson. His revenge hadn't ended with their conviction. It lived on in every Carter Construction project, every business deal, every demonstration of power. Tristan and Clara had tried to steal his company and destroy his life. Instead, they'd helped create something far greater, a dynasty built on the principle that betrayal carried infinite costs. Their suffering would continue as long as Carter Construction existed, their story a perpetual warning to anyone who considered crossing the man who turned revenge into an empire. The lights of Carter Tower illuminated the city as Ethan finalized his plans. In the decades since justice was served, he had transformed a regional construction company into a global force. Personal betrayal had become professional legend, private pain converted to public power. That was the true legacy of Tristan and Clara's betrayal, not the pain they'd caused, but the empire it created, an empire built on the understanding that trust, once broken, could never be repaired. An empire that would stand for generations as testament to a simple truth. Crossing Ethan Carter didn't just end careers or destroy lives. It created legends of failure that would be remembered as long as his success endured. The night settled over Willow Creek, and in his tower of power, Ethan Carter smiled. He had achieved something greater than mere revenge. He turned betrayal into destiny, personal hatred into professional domination. The company that Tristan and Clara tried to steal now shaped the world, while they lived in the shadows of its success, eternal examples of the price of treachery. That was justice, not just punishment, but perpetual consequence, not just revenge, but an eternal reminder. The betrayed had become the betrayer's nightmare, their downfall forever linked to his ascension. In the end, Ethan hadn't just survived their treachery. He'd turned it into the foundation of an empire that would outlive them all. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.